Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. Spencer Forsythe is on the board, running all the tech for us, making sure this thing rocks and works. I am in Atlanta. You can see the Ferris wheel for Centennial Park right behind me. I have been on spring break vacation. But I have managed to go see 5-star Sammy Brown, 5-star King Joseph Edwards, and several other targets that we will have notes up on OU Insider later on this next 24, 48 hours. Talk to David Stone since his visit and Nigel Smith. So we've got a lot coming on OU Insider. 50% off right now. 53, 55, something, $56, I think gets you 1 year. I mean, at 54, I think is the exact price, 54 plus, because it's 108 plus, gets you a whole year of OU Insider plus you get all of 24/7 sports. I think Parker, I think we're burying the lead if we do not jump into Mr. 2025 quarterback. And they beat 2024 for a commitment. How about that? Nobody, was that on your bingo card?
Once he got the offer, yes.
Okay,
Before
January
he got the offer,
1st, was
absolutely
that on your bingo
not.
card? Yeah,
absolutely not.
There we go.
Not a chance. Not with the visit policy. That was the biggest thing. I never imagined we would see any 2025 commit this early in the process, because naturally, the way that Brent Venables and his staff have laid out the expectations to every single player that they're recruiting, if you commit to Oklahoma, you are done taking visits anywhere else. Well, the Sooners got very fortunate in that the kid that they put a red eye on at quarterback in the class of 2025, a kid who is very good, very talented, and only getting better, is also a kid who doesn't love the recruiting process and whose entire family absolutely loves the University of Oklahoma. This was as perfect a scenario as you could have envisioned for Oklahoma's 2025 class, getting off on the right foot with a quarterback, no less, who is now going to be solely focused for the next year and a half to 2 years with recruiting the rest of a class around him in 2025 to the University of Oklahoma.
No doubt. I want to get this straight. So Kevin Sperry was at the camp last June, and I know his dad really well, obviously, from our kids and everything like that playing together. But we were talking, and I remember walking over to him, and he's in that far corner of Everest, and he texts me and says, "Hey, come on over here. Let's chat." And so we started talking, Parker. And we were watching Kevin throw, and him, just his mannerisms, just as he was communicating and learning from Coach, from the offensive coordinator, obviously Jeff Levy, and a bunch of the other guys that were helping out coaching that day. And even, hey, look, Booty was helping coaching, Bevel was helping coaching. I know there's jokes there with the Bevel stuff and whatnot. I get it, folks, I get it. But they were helping. And I thought it was interesting the way Levy and Sperry kind of went back forth, and Jackson Arnold was there that day as well. So I mean, it was a loaded group working out that day at quarterback. I remember, and I believe Deer Creek's quarterback Grady Adamson was there that day as well. It was a ridiculously loaded quarterback, and wasn't Hawkins there that day as well? You're on mute, bud. You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I don't think he was there that day. No, he didn't camp.
Was it the day before? He didn't camp? I think he visited. That's right. He was visiting at some point during that time, though. Because Devon was there at that point. Taking it, he camped and then visited after the camp. So
because
that was a loaded day.
Yeah, the first time the staff got to see Michael throw live was when they offered him. It was the day they offered him at the end of July. So
that's correct. Because I remember Corey and Gibson was there. covering. I remember Jaden Nickens was there. He was doing off and on. He was like going through the drills, but then wouldn't do the one-on-ones because his hamstring at the time, and he was in the middle of the AAU ball and all that. And he didn't want to hurt himself through all that type of stuff because he had those bright green shoes on. So, anyways, I digress. We were talking, and I remember him looking over at me and going, "Man, if they would just pull the trigger, they would never have to worry about their 2025 quarterback right now." Kevin and I talked about it on the way up here. We had come through Oklahoma before. We had talked to Levy quite a bit prior to showing up here. We just feel really good. And the thing is, Mama wants him close to home. And look, at that time, A&M hadn't offered yet, but he said if A&M or Oklahoma offer, those are going to no matter what. No matter what, it's just location. It's the feel they get when they visit those two places. But he said Oklahoma just takes the cake because they fit, as he said, Kev's personality. And lo and behold, 6 months later, and look, Levy was honest. They went and they did the visit after the camp, and Levy looked him square in the eye and said, "We like it. We love what we saw today at the camp, but you've got to have some varsity film before we decide to throw. And you've got to prove to us at that level that you can compete because you're going to Oklahoma. And by the time you're there, the SEC will be bearing down on the university and the football program." And he did excellent. First year, 1,600 yards, I think. And he played on a very bad team. I want people to understand this. Like, his team was not good. Not good. And it's not that they didn't have talent, it's that they were young. Great coaching staff, just very young, just weren't very good up in the trenches. And I watched, I don't know what game you went to, but I went to a couple, and the one I remember most was Sperry going up against Denton Geyer. And, dude, he was just getting killed. I mean, killed, Parker. He was limping. He already had a roughed up Achilles tendon and hamstring going into the game, and they were kicking the crap out of him. He got up. I remember him just getting wasted. You know how thin the walls are at Denton Geyer? Remember how thin they are from the field? Kind of like Oklahoma State, right? He got thrown into the bench, got up. He was like limping. It was like you could tell he was hurting his shoulder, everything, his legs. And he gets up on a 3rd and 18, and this is what just sold me 100% on Kevin Sperry. Hikes the ball, dodges 3 or 4 guys, rolls back to his right, gets clocked right as he's throwing it, but he throws a freaking rope 25 yards down the field, back shoulder, and hits the dude for a first down. And it caught the attention of the Geyer sideline because a couple of the coaches turned to each other and go, "My God, he's going to kill us for a couple of years." And I mean, they were impressed with him. And look, there was buzz. Sperry may have even been thinking about transferring to a place like Denton Geyer at one point. But the character the character he has, he's sticking it out at Prosper Rock Hill, Parker. The fit is so perfect. It's not even funny, man. It's so perfect.
And, it's interesting. One of the conversations that we were having, I think on the radio, probably circa October, when I was about to drive down to Dallas to watch Michael Hawkins and Jackson Arnold square off in that Allen Geyer game was, has there ever been 2 OU quarterback commits or 2 guys that ended up playing quarterback at the University of Oklahoma that faced off with each other at the high school level? Well, this year, Brandon, we got to see that potentially 3 times because Allen played Rock Hill. Rock Hill played Geyer. Geyer played Allen. So we got to potentially see 3 matchups this past fall between future Oklahoma quarterbacks at the high school level.
Yeah, go ahead. I know we'll talk more about Sperry as we go on with this, but it would be totally and utterly just ridiculous of us if we didn't mention Michael Hawkins. And as Sperry is my dude and Arnold and all that, you are the Hawkins main man when it comes to knowing his recruiting stuff. So talk to us about that and let us know where everything stands at that point with right now.
Yeah, obviously it wasn't too long ago that the commitment date was set for April 8th. Sounds like there's a decent chance that gets moved up. And I know there's some tension there because obviously the family would like to have a bunch of people present, extended family, et cetera, for the announcement. That's kind of why the Easter weekend timetable makes a lot of sense. But Mike Jr. is just ready to get it over with. And he's ready to lock in. He's made up his mind. And so there's a chance that April 8th commitment date does get pushed up. We'll see. But at the very latest, you're looking at April 8th as the date that I believe Oklahoma gets their 2024 quarterback commit. And TCU made an intriguing play for Hawkins, but I think it's really telling that they've started to seemingly press elsewhere. I look primarily at Haas Haney of Alito, who is a very talented dual threat quarterback, somewhat diminutive for the position, but a TCU legacy, currently committed to Duke. That's a guy that TCU is pressing hard for. And so I think with that knowledge, it makes it all the more clear, right, that Oklahoma is in the driver's seat right now for Michael Hawkins. His younger brother, Malik, who has an Oklahoma offer as well as of a couple weekends ago, is headed back up to OU on March 25th for the Freak 25 day at Oklahoma. So look, I've said it many a time. You get Michael Hawkins on board, you're absolutely getting Malik coming with him. And I think there are very strong odds that Devon Mitchell would follow Michael Hawkins to OU if that were the case. So keeping an eye on that very closely as this whole process winds down. And with Sperry on board in the class of 2025 and potentially Hawkins coming down the chute as potentially even earlier than April 8th, but at the very latest April 8th, I think lining up Arnold, Hawkins, and Sperry the way that Oklahoma have, they hold the key to DFW, Brandon, in 3 straight cycles, because can make a very strong argument that they're getting the best quarterback from the DFW area in 3 straight classes. And if you look at Oklahoma's key targets in the class of 2024 and beyond, a ton of them are from the state of Texas. And more specifically, a ton of them are from the DFW Metroplex. And so this is where you start to build your nucleus on the recruiting trail. You lock in a quarterback who is a high character, high ceiling guy who is respected among his peers and hails from one of the hotbeds regionally when it comes to finding elite prospects at the prep level. Fortunately, the Sooners have tripped into a situation where in 3 straight cycles, they've got guys in Arnold, Hawkins, and Sperry that I know the jury is still technically out on Hawkins, but 3 guys that love the University of Oklahoma and are willing to go all in for the institution. So really exciting time to be an Oklahoma fan if you got eyes on the Lone Star State and the Sooners' ability to wreak some havoc down there in the world of recruiting.
Yeah, so there was a comment in our live chat down here, said, let's hope Michael Hawkins Jr. can handle Smitty. Parker, you and I were standing there talking to Michael Hawkins Sr., and he readily admitted Smitty is why he left Oklahoma to begin with. And he will readily admit that he regrets it, like fully regrets the move. He is adamant about it, and it's why he still loves Oklahoma so much, because as he matured as an adult, he understood things a lot better. And, you know, that shows just the type of person Michael Hawkins Sr. is, by the way. Like, that is a good man, and he's raising his kids properly. And as a quarterback dad, it's hard to – most quarterbacks' dads they're crazy, Parker. Like, Oklahoma has managed to potentially have 3 quarterback dads in a row if they somehow can land Hawkins that are just salt of the earth people with Todd Arnold, obviously Kevin Sperry Sr. and Michael Hawkins Sr., if that is the case. But to the point with the Schmitty stuff, remember what he told us at the UA camp? He said, man, Schmitty called me this weekend. Like, you talk about communication, like, we've mended fences. He said, that's my guy. Like, we love each other. We talk all the time. He's recruiting Hawk, and he's trying to get Michael to come to OU and telling him, you know, how things have changed when it comes to the strength and conditioning. Yeah, it's tough, but it's not as tough, right, as it used to be. Things have changed. Smitty's changed a little bit. He's still a hard ass compared to 99% of the strength and conditioning coaches out there. But there's a huge amount of respect between Schmitty and Hawkins Sr. now that, like that, because Parker, he was talking about how, the ball was dropped a little bit between everything. And then, I mean, you know it better than I do. I have like bits and pieces from talking to Hawkins Sr., kind of dive into the whole Levy, Schmitty, that dynamic, all that type of stuff there for everybody. Muted again. You're muted. You're on mute a lot.
So, dang it. It's because I have the show pulled up on my browser so that I can follow along with the chat. And so I pause it occasionally and put myself on mute so that you can't hear the programming and the feedback. But so the Levy Schmitty dynamic with the Hawkins family, is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of like where he talked about Levy dropping the ball a little bit there, and Levy admitted it, saying, "Hey,
so
I was dealing with all this stuff, the coaching stuff, and all these people come at me trying to get them to be an OC somewhere." And I'll let you take it from there.
I remember texting with Mike Jr. all throughout spring last year and throughout the early part of the summer, and Mike was sitting there wondering, why on earth haven't I gotten the Oklahoma offer? Why aren't they looking at me? Have they not seen the film? Why is this so? Why are these schools offering? Because he had an Alabama offer by that point. And Michael Hawkins has never really given Alabama the time of day, but he had an Alabama offer. He said, look, I got the Alabama offer. What do I got to do to get the OU offer? And Levy wanted to see him live. He got up there at the end of July to work out for Oklahoma. Workout went really well. He got the offer, and ever since then, he's been the top priority at the position on the board for Oklahoma. So Levy kind of readily admitted to the Hawkins family that he should have been a little earlier to the punch in developing that relationship, evaluating Michael. But at the end of the day, it's water under the bridge, because Oklahoma is really where Michael has always wanted to be. And if he wasn't going to end up at Oklahoma, there's a varying number of reasons why he might not end up at Oklahoma in the end. But it's not, if there is a world in which Michael Hawkins does not end up at OU, it's not going to be because he has the slightest distaste for Jeff Lebby or the University of Oklahoma. And in fact, it'll probably be the hardest decision he's ever made in his young life, to say no to the University of Oklahoma. So once they got past that initial tension, I suppose, if you can call it that, and I'm not really sure it qualifies as that in my eyes, but once they got past that, obviously OU led for Hawkins really quickly, and the rest of the staff has been proactive in pursuing and developing relationships with the Hawkins family and with Michael and making him feel at home. He's visited campus 7 times in the last 8 months, Brandon. Generally, when a kid visits campus 7 times in 8 months, that guy's going to end up in your signing class. Very rarely do you see a kid on campus that much and he doesn't end up calling that campus his home in the end. So to everybody,
unless you're Derek LeBlanc in Florida, right?
Well, yes, naturally, except for that. But no, to everybody to all the doomers who were shouting, follow the visits, after he took that visit to TCU at the very end of January. Well, if you really want to follow the visits, man, Michael Hawkins has been at Oklahoma more than he's been to every other campus combined since his recruitment really started to heat up.
No, Mongo. I'm not drinking smart water. I'm drinking Good and Gather alkaline water and electrolytes. 9.5 pH. I don't know. We got it. I don't know where my wife got it, but it's what I'm drinking, man. I drink a couple of those a day, bro. So let's talk a little bit about the Under Armour camp, man. Let's dive into, kind of our evaluations of a few OU targets. You and I both talked to, gosh, man. I don't know that I've ever been to a camp where there was that many OU targets from
There
O
were a
line to
lot.
D line.
Goodness
Holy
gracious.
crap. We could have used the third rover there that day very easily. It was rough, man, to try to get everybody. But yeah, I guess going to your evaluations first, and you're going to start with Wesco. I think that's a natural place to start because he's a dude.
Oh, he's
But
freaking dominant, Brandon. And I I'll go ahead and say it now. I know it's March and I don't necessarily have the strong, like, indisputable feeling about Wesco that I did about PJ Atabare at this time last year, but I really do think Wesco is a guy that could push for 5-star status. I mean, that guy's the complete package. And the CeeDee Lamb comparisons are lofty and they're probably somewhat misplaced because CeeDee Lamb is one of the 5-10 best wide receivers in the NFL right now. But I also don't think those CeeDee Lamb comparisons are terribly far fetched when you're talking about Brian Wesco, because he's a rail thin dude and not a whole lot of muscle on that frame right now. And he's a little bit awkward and stiff in the way that he walks around, but man, he gets on that gridiron and sheesh, nobody can touch him. Nobody can defend him. And he's got the speed to blow by you. He's got the quickness to get you off balance and miss you with a cut. He's got the ball skills to go up and get a 50-50 ball against pretty much anybody. And just the overall athleticism and the well-rounded nature of the way that he plays the position. I think as he continues to get more exposure, because he plays at a high school at Midlothian that does not throw the ball a whole heck of a lot at all. And so I think that's kind of held him back in terms of where he ranks and honestly how quickly the offers started rolling for Bryant Wesco. But I think this offseason is going to be huge for him because as he continues to compete in environments like the Under Armour camp this past weekend, and as he continues to show out on the 7v7 circuit, that's already a guy that's broken into the top 100 in the 24/7 sports composite. And I don't think he's done rising because that dude has just scratched the surface of what he's going to be. And there are some wide receivers that are dominant at the prep level because they max out early, right? Because they're already 6'3", 185 pounds and running a 4.5 by the time they're a freshman in high school. I'll give you a perfect example from my home state. Devon Hall, 4-star wide receiver in the 2024 class out of Bellevue West, former teammate of Caden Helms. And that was a guy that, like, just by the time he enrolled at the high school level, by the time he took the field as a freshman, he was already as big as he was going to get from a frame standpoint. And he was already very, very polished. And so the zenith of his development came very early. So he was a guy that instantly, when the 2024 rankings came out, he was, I believe, top 50. And naturally, as things have settled and other guys have risen, he's kind of settled there into mid-tier 4-star status. He's a really good player, but you compare him to a guy like Bryant Wesco, and it's easy to look at Wesco and take stock of what he is and be impressed with it. But it's another thing entirely to imagine what a guy like Wesco could be once you get him in a collegiate strength and conditioning program. And as he continues to kind of, I don't know that I would say grow into his body, but just become more comfortable within himself. I think Wesco has an immensely high ceiling. I think he ends up in Oklahoma's class. That's kind of the industry consensus right now. And man, that is a guy that could have a very big impact very early on if he's an Oklahoma Sooner. And he's a guy that'll have a real big impact really early on, regardless of where he ends up. So that was a guy I was super impressed with. Michael Hawkins, Kevin Sperry, those two were among the sharpest at the quarterback position at the camp. Hawkins actually won the accuracy challenge, which I think that's for all the people that question his ability to throw the ball and think he's just an athlete. That's some proof right there that he's a little bit more advanced than many give him credit for. KJ Daniels was a guy that had the fastest 10-yard split of anybody at the camp. Brandon, I don't know if you saw the testing numbers, but I that's really what stood out about KJ Daniels when we got the first chance to see live. A lot of people hadn't gotten the chance to see KJ Daniels live. The wide receiver out of Franklinton, Louisiana, just got an Oklahoma offer. Oklahoma leads right now in that recruitment by a substantial margin. And it feels like at this point, LSU is the only school that's going to be able to deny OU there. But man, watching Daniels, it was kind of astonishing how much faster he accelerated than anybody else at the wide receiver position. He's not that big. He's not that physically developed yet. And maybe the top end speed maybe it doesn't stand out as much when you put him alongside the likes of a guy like Terry Bussey, for instance, right? But the acceleration, the 0 to 60 factor with KJ Daniels, super enticing, man. And I think that's a really good eval by Emmett Jones. And if LSU continues to be reticent in pulling the trigger on offering him, I think he ends up in Oklahoma's class. Now, to be clear, if he gets an LSU offer, it's over. He's going to Baton Rouge. But in the absence of an LSU offer, I think you really got to like where Oklahoma stands. And he has a ton of love for Norman, Oklahoma after taking a visit up there. Ton of love for the whole staff. And he's got relationships beyond just Emmett Jones, too. So I've talked for long enough. I'll let you jump in here, but those were kind of my standout impressions from Sunday's events.
Yeah, I liked Riley Wormley quite a bit. I thought he's a dude, and obviously he's going to be visiting Oklahoma twice. He's coming on the 25th, and he's coming up on the spring game. Obviously, like you, I was hugely impressed with Wesco. I thought that the way he high points the ball, the way he is able to control his body is just otherworldly. Like, honestly, like he's special, very, very special. And Oklahoma has a great connection. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be an OU TCU battle once again. I think landing Kevin Sperry was great for Oklahoma with Wesco, because obviously all those guys know the top quarterbacks in that region and in that area. Midlothian, Allen, McKinney, Prosper, Grapevine, Colleyville. Like, you get around that 121, and you stretch that across from Fort Worth to all the way to the east side of the DFW, and you go north, or at least hover around that area, and you start to get guys that play, or compete with each other on a yearly basis and train with one another and do all that type of stuff. So, but I'll say this: if they were to land Hawkins, I think that takes it to a whole nother world with Wesco, because they know each other very, very, very well. And you and I have talked about it. He is a key here, not just with Devon Mitchell, who, by the way, is visiting on the 25th. I'll go ahead and drop that nugget. I dropped it on OU Insider VIP, so that's kind of the stuff that you'll get if you're on OU Insider VIP. Like, they've known about it. But again, that's another 5-star that's going to be visiting Oklahoma. And his connection, Los Alamitos or Allen, it doesn't matter. He grew up around Michael Hawkins, and they've been really, really good friends for years. I don't know the whole backstory, and that's not true. I don't want the whole backstory to him moving out to the West Coast, Mitchell. That's a different thing, Parker. Like, that's a whole nother story, whatever. People want to know, just not our place to say. But I also thought, Kobe Black didn't play or compete one-on-one. He just went through the drills. Same with Corey and Gibson. They're already going to be playing in the game. They basically just came there to kiss the babies and do the interviews and do all that type of stuff, and at least create some big names to get more media coverage out there. And that's what they're supposed to do at the Under Armour stuff. And I thought he looked great in the drills. I mean, you talk about somebody that's long, athletic. His hips are very fluid. I mean, just he's different. He's different. He's built different. You just go watch his film. He plays different. Same with Corey Gibson. I mean, just he's different. And I mean, I remember talking to Jackson Arnold after they played Lancaster. I mean, he basically said, he goes, dude, the only person I had to watch for that he thought he had to worry about the whole game was Gibson. He said he knew exactly where he was lined up, and they were trying to move him around and do all types of crazy stuff to confuse Jackson. But he said he knew exactly. He was looking for his number, and he knew exactly where he was because he's that good of a player. He didn't go through the one-on-ones either, but I thought he was a good player. I mean, he looked just like Kobe Black. He looked fluid. I know somebody asked in our chat, like, please explain a little bit of the connection between Kobe Black and Brent Venables. Well, his dad played for Brent Venables at Kansas State. And so that relationship is deep. And I mean, when you get Kobe Black talking about it, like, he's not shy. It's like they know each other. They're close. They've remained close. That comfortability. And look, there's another big connection that I'm going to have up on OU Insider with a 5-star that's in the 2024 class. Just going to hint it right here. There's another connection to the OU staff that is helping Oklahoma immensely with this guy. Immensely. Just a little tease. But, yeah, Corey Gibson, the same thing, man. He's going to be visiting Oklahoma again for the spring game. He's been to Oklahoma 5 or 6 times already. Like, he's been to Oklahoma a ton. Kobe Black has too. People tend to forget that he came up all the time with a certain running back that was with him at Waco Conley whenever OU was recruiting him. And then Oklahoma stopped recruiting him. And he ended up going to Texas after he moved to DeSoto, obviously. But they used to come up all the time for unofficial visits. So Kobe Black's been around Oklahoma a ton. Obviously, his brother played at Oklahoma State. So they're very, very cognizant of what Oklahoma stands for, what the program is. They've been around it on both sides as an opponent and as a visitor. So there's Oklahoma has a chance there. Like, his relationship with Valai on top of all that, like, Oklahoma has a chance. They're riding off Oklahoma with Kobe Black is crazy. And I say that because Parker, he says that he thinks Oklahoma, he considers them an in-state school when it comes to visits and how he treats them in the recruiting process. I think that's interesting. I thought that was a really interesting note because that means location for him, it's close enough for him and his family that they feel comfortable with the distance.
And it makes sense, though, right? Because even from where he's at in Waco, Oklahoma's only a 4-hour drive. Honestly, that's just as close and closer than some of the flagship schools in the state of Texas. I was talking to Aaron Flowers at the camp this weekend. Big OU lean, by the way. Big OU lean. That has not changed at all. But Aaron Flowers was like, yeah, I want to get out to Tech, but Tech's so far away, man. Like, that's forever from here. Like, yeah, Texas is a huge state. And so with Oklahoma being nestled against Texas the way that it is geographically, I mean, it stood out when I talked to Peyton Pierce a couple of weeks ago as well. He was just like, yeah, I can drive up to Oklahoma anytime. So I'm not going to worry about scheduling visits there because that's a 2-hour drive that I can make whenever. So geography really does work to Oklahoma's advantage with a lot of these Texas kids because it is not very far at all. In some cases, it's closer. Like, for instance, if you're in DFW, you're just as close to Norman, Oklahoma as you are to Austin, Texas. So I know there's that sect of Texas fans that go, well, Oklahoma can't win without Texas talent. Well, the state of Texas is enormous. And that's just an example of one community within the enormous state of Texas that has the same geographical proximity to Norman as they do to Austin.
Are you still there? You froze up. I don't know if you're done talking.
Yes, I am done talking.
Okay. I was like, you froze up. I wasn't sure if you were done. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think just from the way a lot of these, yeah, like I was talking to an OU source today, or actually yesterday, and they too consider everything from like Waco North in state. I thought that was really interesting because they were like, "Yeah, no, 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 we're talking about," and like I'm talking about out of state guys. They said I'm talking about out of state visitors, and I was like, "Hey, we were just talking about Texas." They said, "No, no, no, that's in state to us. That's in state to us." I said, "Where is in state?" He's like, "Waco North, Waco North." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I I find that intriguing just because it's almost like when you watch that 30 for 30 documentary, The U, right? Like where they said they call it the state of Miami, and it's I-4 all the way across from Tampa to Orlando, across from the Gulf of Mexico to the Atlantic Ocean, south, all the way to the Florida Keys. They call it the state of Miami, and that's where they want to go get all their players from during the or Howard Schnellenberger and Jimmy Johnson and all those guys. And I find that interesting because they call it the state of Oklahoma, and I was told it's basically if you draw a line from Kansas City all the way to Denver, down to Waco, kind of East Texas across to like Odessa and Midland. It's like a box, they said. And they call that because it's a 7 hour radius to everything. They said 7 to 10 hour race, he said. And they said that is the state of Oklahoma in their recruiting. And they feel like they're going to start there and then they branch out and start nitpicking players from other states, out of state, they said from that point on. And I found that very interesting on how they go about in state. So it's not just OK preps. It's literally like a big 7, 8 hour, 10 hour radius that they go off of as their in-state recruits because it's drivable. So, what was I'm trying to think of another guy that really stood out. I thought Jaden Hardy was pretty good. I thought he had a couple of reps where I was like, man, he kind of got on his heels a little bit. Busey, well, I think it was the one I watched him where he covered Busey, who was just a freaking dude at wide receiver. Uh, Yeah, and Hardy was like, I remember when Busey caught the ball on him, he was like, "Good God, that was unbelievable." And so he was just like in awe. But outside of that, I thought Jaden Hardy was really impressive, really impressive. And the weird part is, Parker, is like they have so many guys in the state of Texas that they can get, even in the state of Oklahoma in 24 and 25. Those two classes are so loaded. Like they don't have to leave very far. I think that's going to help Oklahoma immensely down the road, obviously.
And don't forget about Kansas City either and all of its
Yeah.
satellite communities.
Yeah.
Realistically, if Oklahoma drew a circle with a radius of 300 miles from Norman, they could recruit a top 5 class from there. Now, they're going to get guys from outside that radius. They will. And they're not going to get everybody that they want within that radius. But that could happen. They could do that.
No, I mean, obviously they're going to have a UC camp up there, and you'll be there at Kansas City. Williams Winery will most likely be there, I was told. So that's going to be good for you. People want to ask.
He'll assuredly be there, as will all the Lee's Summit North guys. If there's an opportunity for exposure, Jamar Mosey is going to have him there.
So I guess people want to know about David Stone's visit. I'll give the abridged version. How about that? I won't go into too much detail. And y'all get the rest on OU, the VIP board. One, he liked it a lot. I talked to obviously his best friend and former Little League teammate, Michael Patterson McDonald, the defensive back out of Westmore. Both of them it was the first time Michael has been there and been treated like red carpet treatment. So that really made a big impression on him. Obviously, he's going up with David Stone on the 16th to visit Michigan State again. David Stone's going to visit USC for the first time following that visit. Then he's coming back to Oklahoma, and then he's going to IMG after that, after his spring breaks up. Here's the thing: is he spent, like, people don't know this, like he spent 3 days on campus essentially, hanging out off and on. He said that Coach Bates came back. He was like on his vacation, and they set it up that way where he got like 3 or 4 days with his wife, and then came back and spent a couple of days with David and Michael on campus. So they were there for 6 or 7 hours, they said, on the 13th of March. But as far as the quotes and like everything else, you know, and how they feel about it, I'll leave that for the VIP. But I'll just say I wouldn't sweat too much if I'm an Oklahoma fan. Like, no matter what you see on the internet and what you see him post and what you see him try to sell, and he's building a brand and all that type of stuff. This isn't something he said or anything to me. I'm just going off of my understanding of the situation. There's a reason why you don't see Oklahoma like freaking out and just throwing offers at and like rushing to go grab a whole bunch of other defensive linemen. They feel great about Airy, Nigel Smith, David Stone, Sadavian Sims, and it seems like they feel fairly decent about Jay Sean as well. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Your thoughts on all that too? I know you didn't talk to David, but your thoughts on the rest of it? I talked to Nigel for a long time the other day too, so I'll have that coming.
Nigel's a guy that feels very much like a heavy OU lean right now, and it's been that way for I would say upwards of a year at this point. Somebody said in the chat that having no shot with Danny Okoye is a horrible in-state miss. Like it's not a miss if the kid has no interest in OU, which he doesn't, and also with the defensive linemen and edges that Oklahoma is currently in play for, Okoye is not a guy you need. He's not.
I don't even know that they would take him if he tried to commit at this point, to be honest. Like, and that's not saying like he's not a great player, because he is, Parker. He's a really good player. But I just, you and I know kind of some backstories to all this type of stuff. That's kind of a post-National Signing Day type deal, but it just feels like there's a reason why they haven't sat there and begged for an in-state kid. If they really, really felt like he was a need, I promise you Chavis and Venables wouldn't have just waved the white flag and moved on.
They're in very good shape for two of the top 10 edge rushers in America right now, in Will Nwaneri and Jay Sean Ross. Now, do they get both? I don't know. I certainly feel like they end up with Will Nwaneri. Jay Sean Ross is a bit more of a mystery right now, but I do think OU has a very solid shot there. From the super chat, Jacob Ogle said the Cincinnati Bengals just made Orlando the highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL, that being Orlando Brown, former Sooner. He's not the highest paid offensive lineman, I don't think. He did get the highest signing bonus for an offensive lineman ever, upwards of $31 million.
No, the highest lineman is Trent Williams, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Orlando Brown's good, but he's not highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL good.
No, there's two other Sooners higher.
Yeah. Mongo in the super chat says, congratulations, Parker, on getting engaged. Thank you, Mongo. Yes. And shout out to
Ricardo all invited LeBlanc. To the wedding?
What up?
Are we all invited to the wedding? Like,
when you say we all, Brandon, here's the thing.
Well, here's that. No. Let me like, they don't have to be physically present to the wedding. Like, we can live stream this bad boy. We got the equipment for that. Let's go,
Brandon. You and the family will obviously be invited. I unfortunately cannot guarantee the same for the nearly 500 people watching.
Does anybody object to this? And you hear somebody like check, really? You probably speak your piece.
Oh man. Trust me, I would invite you all if I could feed you all, but that's not in the budget. I regret to inform you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I guess before we go, spring ball starts next week. We would be just it'd be stupid for us not to talk about it. What position battle are you most excited about to watch?
Um, I would say that if we're talking position battles, I don't know that we'll get any of them settled in the spring nationally. I really don't know that any of them will have. I don't know that there'll be a strong sense of who fits where over whom, even after spring ball, because the guys that show up midway through the summer have the opportunity to change all of that. So too does the period in between spring ball and fall camp. And fall camp itself can be an entirely different animal. But in spring ball, I think the guys that I really am going to be watching carefully, one would be Shane Witter at the linebacker position, a guy that has had his moments, but has struggled with inconsistency, has struggled with injuries, but a guy that can bring a lot to the table, especially as it pertains to linebacker depth, just having another guy that you feel confident rotating on the field. Now, he is not, to my understanding, going to be a full go for spring ball. He's not quite going to be cleared yet for 11 on 11 action, but he is going to be able to go through the individual drills. And so he's basically going to be as close to a full go as possible without having that designation of being a full go. So Witter is an intriguing guy to me as he steps into his fourth year in an Oklahoma Sooners uniform, because if I think he is healthy, we know how fast he is, and the speed has always been his calling card. If he comes around and he feels that healthy heat from the young guys, Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, Phil Picciotti, etc., then I think you can unlock some good ball from Shane Witter. Super eager to see Peyton Bowen and how he stacks up against the other safeties, because that boy good. And the word from within is he may be good enough to play and supplant some veterans right away. So whether it's at Cheetah or safety, Peyton Bowen's certainly a guy. As a freshman, I think PJ Adebawore is in that same conversation. We know how good they are relative to the other 17, 18-year-olds that they were going up against at the prep level. How good are they relative to 21 and 22-year-olds that have been in a collegiate strength and conditioning program for a couple of years? That remains to be seen. But if they come around quickly, those are two guys that you can expect to see on the field quite a bit this fall. Offensively, I think everybody understands at this point that Nick Anderson has me stoked, and I'm really excited to see what a fully healthy Nick Anderson could be in this offense. And again, it's not something that will be settled by April 22nd when the spring game occurs, but who is real and who's not when it comes to the many positional battles that there will be on the offensive line. Those are some of the things that I would highlight. And then defensive line, man, it's it's anybody's game at this point as to who plays at those four positions.
Yeah, no, okay. So you talked about Peyton Bowen in the safety position. What if I told you that there's a certain veteran that's woken up or been woken up, newcomer come in that aren't? It's Key Lawrence. I'll just say that. So, and I'm trying to word this right without saying too much. Key has practiced hard, played hard, all that type of stuff, but there was always a 2 or 3 levels he could have gone up and done more with, I've been told. And they, from everybody I've talked to, like, they're like, that is a different cat now. Like, focused, trying to listen more in the meetings, taking notes, like doing all the little things. And this is a culture thing that you, and the growth in the culture that you usually see from year 1 to year 2, right? Like in a staff, if they implement it correctly, you start to see those type of things. One, because competition gets stiffer the more they bring in talent, but two, it's just the natural progression of a program as the coach and that staff continue to implement their culture, their way of doing things on a day in and day out basis. So Key Lawrence is going to be interesting to me. One, because he's uber talented. Like, the dude has like day two talent, NFL draft. And I don't want to say like day one, because that's a special talent, but I think he has day two type of talent. And it's just always been mental with him. And consistency in what you do is mental. So it's more or less the old adage of, if you're confused, it's because you didn't prepare yourself enough and you don't know what you're doing. And that's kind of where he's been, is a little bit more confused. I like Bowen. I've heard a ton of great stuff about him. At some point during the season, it wouldn't shock me to see the cheetah position be Deshaun McCullough, the free safety to be Billy Bowman, and the strong safety to be Peyton Bowen. Like, that wouldn't shock me at all, or vice versa as far as Billy and Peyton go. And I think I also think Robert Spears Jennings, if he can be patient enough and just kind of work his way through, when Billy Bowman decides to go to the league, there's a good chance Robert Spears Jennings and Peyton Bowen are your future on the deep back end of the defense. And Deshaun McCullough is obviously got another year or two at the Cheetahs. So they've pretty much replenished the back end of the defensive depth of talent. We didn't even name several guys as far as a couple of the transfers that came in that are really good back end players. And cornerback, dude, Gentry Williams to be cleared. Thank goodness nothing was wrong there. He'll be good to go after spring break. But the battle between him and Kendall Dolby is going to be interesting at corner, because Woody Washington is going to start. Like, he's too good not to start, right, Parker? Like, we all know that.
Yeah.
But that other corner, like, that shows you where they're at. Like, Kendall Dolby's a dude. Like, there's people in the program that compare him to Derek Strait as far as what they see in him talent-wise. And that's saying a lot. The dude was the defensive player of the year in college football. He won a Jim Thorpe. He's a Nagurski winner. Like, that's a high praise, but obviously he's got to prove it on the field. But they see that in him, like the potential. For me, I know you like Shane Witter. I think the linebacker outside of Danny Stutzman, just the battle between Kanik and like Kobe and Lewis, are going to be just it's going to be entertaining this spring. And I think everybody, I would be crazy not to see the growth that Dylan Gabriel made, but not just that. What has competition done to him, right? With Jackson Arnold. And where is Jackson Arnold? Being that he's only been in the program for like 3.5 months, where is he now? Like, his understanding of the playbook, his timing with some of the wide receivers. Come April 22nd, watching those two go at it in the spring game, it's going to be must-see television, in my opinion. Like, that's what you want to see. Offensive line, I think that's going to be huge. I think the tackle is where it's going to be the most fun to watch that battle. Essentially because two of the tackles are out, right? Like, Rouse and Sexton are out. That they're not going to go through spring. So seeing the backups and seeing how Beatenbow kind of meshes all that, and he's great. He's probably the best at juggling players and teaching them to play multiple positions than any coach in college football. And it's why his guys are always so good when they get to the league, because they can do so many different things. And then finally, the battle between Sawchuk and Barnes is going to be epic to see who RB1 is. And again, I know I say this and it's become kind of a running joke at this point for a lot of people, but I mean it. Like, if Marcus Major can freaking stay healthy, like he just never can stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, that 1-2-3 punch between those three at running back might be one of the best to ever come through Oklahoma as far as talent goes. But he's got to stay healthy. But if you throw him out of the equation and you just have Sawchuk and Barnes, like Parker, that is going to be a fun battle. Yin and the yang, like how they decide they want to match that all up and make it work during the season, it's going to be it's going to be epic. It's going to be so much fun for fans.
I honestly, I haven't really put a whole lot of thought into that. I don't put a whole lot of stock into that battle just because I don't think you're going to have an RB1 in Oklahoma. I think you're going to have an RB1A and an RB1B.
That's fair, but it's still going to be fun to watch them try to be RB1.
Yeah, I would anticipate a pretty equal split between those two. And
probably
that's something that honestly, like when DeMarco Murray was recruiting those guys, that's exactly what he sold them on.
He did.
We're not going to overwork you. You're going to come here. You're going to be part of a committee, or rather a tandem, and we're going to get you plenty of touches, but we're also going to keep you fresh. And we're not going to hand you the ball 35 times a game and completely wear you out. And they were receptive to that.
No, they were. I mean, that Barnes, I remember when I was in Vegas, it's kind of the weird thing that I do is I go on vacation, but I always, if I'm somewhere that there's an OU recruit, like I'd like, you got to stop and see him if you're there. It's ridiculous for you to be 20 minutes from a recruit and not go see him. So, and get information on him. And I went and saw Barnes after he was working out at his little, I can't remember what the place is called, something one. And, as a matter of fact, Jalen Hill was there too. That was the hilarious part about it. Like I'm sitting down and Jalen Hill just comes sits right down next to me, starts talking because I covered him when he was in high school. OU was recruiting him in basketball. So, but Barnes was wearing like this Miami sweatshirt, and I was like, Miami? He's like, well, I'm originally from Florida, Orlando actually. And I said, so are you into all that? And he's like, yeah, like I'm all right, but Oklahoma is where I'm, like he told me off the record, he's like, Oklahoma is where I'm probably going to go. Just love DeMarco Murray. And I said, why? He goes, because I won't get banged up. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I will never have like 300 carries in a season. I may have 300 touches, but I won't have 300 carries where I'm running into 300 pounders. I'll get it out in space, like as a receiver or something like that. I said, so you want to split time? He goes, absolutely. Make my NFL career longer. And I thought that was really neat to hear. Sawchuk said the same thing, and Sawchuk's dad said the same thing. But to hear a 17-year-old kid have that sort of just mental capacity to think that far ahead for his future shows you the maturity of both those kids just at a young age and why they're so successful already in college. Right there was a prime example. I think be remiss if I didn't mention that the battle between the wide receivers is going to be fun. Obviously, Farouk and Stoops, they're there. Like they're going to start. But that third spot, Parker, is going to be a huge battle. And will the receivers prove enough to where Oklahoma won't go out and try to get a transfer? That's something everybody's looking at too, because that's what the staff's looking at. Like, do they need to go get a transfer, or do they feel comfortable with what they have? And then maybe they can go grab a D lineman or something like that to fill that void of whoever leaves, right? With the numbers. So I don't know, man. Like, if you had to pick right now, who is your third receiver?
Blind.
This is blind. Besides Stoops and Farouk, like who's the third target? I mean, and obviously
Nick
Stogner.
Anderson. I think it's Nick Anderson.
Okay.
And I also think you're going to see a good, healthy dose of Gavin Freeman, and he probably will. And Stoops will naturally be a revolving door in that slot position. Stoops having the experience and just the all-around value that he brings to the football field as a blocker, as a mind, that's going to give him the natural leg up over Gavin Freeman. But obviously Freeman is a lot faster and a lot more explosive than Drake Stoops. And so that will be a guy that they find snaps for and find touches for. But I really, really like Nick Anderson heading into year 2 for him at Oklahoma.
I would agree with Nick Anderson because or at least they tried to play him quite a bit in the bowl game. What about Andrew Anthony? You know, like just his speed. He's longer than a lot of people think he is. Like he's a taller guy than what people are kind of expecting. You know, he doesn't look 6'2" on the field, but he is. If you stand next to him, he's a legit 6'2", 6'1". But he's just got that breakaway speed that Oklahoma wants that can stretch the field. So does Anderson. Obviously, Nick Anderson has that as well, and he's bigger. I don't know, man. Like, what about like? There's a huge part of me, Parker, that thinks that Jacoby Johnson ends up before even the season starts, ends up as a wide receiver.
No, I agree. And
I
I
don't know
think
why I think that. Like, because I think he has a huge upside, dude, at defensive back. But
they've got enough defensive backs right now, and I'll go ahead and say it. Jacoby Johnson's a better wide receiver than he is a defensive
no, he
back.
is. Oh, it's not even close. Not even close. He's never been trained to play defensive back.
And
he's been trained to play wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think he would be a better wide receiver collegiately than he would be a defensive back collegiately. And he's got a high enough athletic ceiling that he'll be more than serviceable on either side. But I agree, Brandon, and it's something I've said for months. I don't see how you can take a guy like that is as naturally gifted and just has all of the innate abilities that make a wide receiver special and then stick him on defense. It doesn't last. Hey, heck, it didn't last for DJ Graham. And no knock on DJ Graham, but Jacoby Johnson's a lot better than DJ Graham was at that age.
No, you're right. But so you brought up DJ Graham. Let's talk about it. Everybody wants to talk wide receivers because that is like the one position because of all the drops last year, and it cost Oklahoma 5 games. I'm laughing about it now because it literally cost them 5 games. 7 drop touchdown passes on the season. 7. 3 other ones called back for penalties from the wide receivers. So that's a total of 10, Parker. That's 70 points off the board. And not even counting the huge chunk of yards that a lot of those had. Like those were like bombs that Gabriel just dropped in the breadbasket that were just dropped. But so let's talk about DJ, and obviously let's talk about Bunkley Shelton, because I think those guys they're kind of forgotten.
Yeah, well, here's kind of where I stand on this. Obviously, there are 3 guys that indisputably are going to have a big role in this offense at wide receiver in Stoops, Farouk, and Gavin Freeman. If Nick Anderson takes the jump that I expect him to take, then what you're left with is at the maximum a status as wide receiver option number 5 in Oklahoma's offense for DJ Graham or LV Bunkley Shelton or Jaden Gibson or Andrell Anthony or what have you, right? And so I don't question that those guys are going to have an impact, going to have a role, going to see the field. I just question how much production you can realistically expect from a guy like that if this receiving core shakes out like I think it'll shake out. So I think DJ Graham is intriguing and he probably has a higher ceiling than LV Bunkley Shelton does. He probably has a higher ceiling than Andrell Anthony does. But I even if that's the case, does he have a higher ceiling than Nick Anderson? I wouldn't say so. And he's certainly not as advanced right now in terms of his grasp of the offense and the coaching staff's trust in him as Farouk, Stoops, Gavin Freeman. So I like DJ Graham. I think he'll catch more than a few passes for Oklahoma this fall, but he's not a 1,000-yard guy or anywhere close to it as I see it.
Yeah. Well, all right. What do you think the odds are? And I agree with you, what you said. Bunkley Shelton, I think he's explosive. He's always had trouble staying because he's light. He's a little light in the britches. He's always had trouble staying healthy, right? Like, and taking shots and stuff like that. That's been kind of his knock. He has the speed, the ability to be a big play guy. It's just going to be, can he hold up? And can he be physical enough blocking? I think those are things that they've held him back. That's why people always ask, like, why hasn't he gotten a chance? That's why. Those are the reasons why. If you're going to play in Levy's offense, wide receivers have to be able to block because they love to run the ball too. And there's a lot of zone reads. There's a lot of RPOs. So you're in the middle of your route and the quarterback decides he's going to bring it down and run with it. Well, you got to be physical mindset to turn around and go try to knock somebody's head off and block somebody, or at least get in the way and not be like, oh, I don't want to do this. So those are things that have held him back a little bit. And I agree with you. DJ Graham, he's probably a little raw. He's gone through the offseason, I think. And obviously we heard during the bowl practices that he was just tearing it up at wide receiver. But there's a ton of talent there. There's a lot of battle. If DJ can come out of that and be the guy and beat out a Nick Anderson, beat out a Andrew Anthony, beat out a Petaway, those type of guys, then watch out. Because not playing for 3 years and then coming over and being the guy, the third guy, the upside's probably pretty big for him at that point if he can do that. I guess the big question is does Oklahoma feel confident enough after spring to not take a wide receiver transfer? You're on mute.
Dang it. Third time is not a charm. My answer to that would be yes.
They don't take one.
They do not take one. That would be my bet. Especially with Jacoby coming along, because I think he ends up at receiver.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I'm going to disagree with you, and here's why. So you brought up Jacoby, and I agree that at some point in his career, I could see him moving over to offense. And I've always thought offense was probably his strong suit. But Jacoby wants to play defensive back. Like, he loves defensive back. Loves it. He loves offense, obviously. He likes making the big plays and all that. But he put it to me like this. He said, is the path of least resistance to get on the field as defensive back? He goes, I'm going to play defensive back. I want to get on the field. Now, here's the other thing. Venables is a defensive-minded coach. He's going to take every athlete, and Jacoby is the best athlete arguably the best athlete on that team. Now, like, you talk about a dude that can play. He's an elite track guy. He's an elite hoops guy with P5 offers, like legit P5 offers, committable P5 offers. And he was a stud All-American in football. You won't find very many of those guys, right? Like, that's hard to find. Somebody that's that well-rounded in sports and athletics. So Venables being a defensive-minded guy, he's going to go down swinging, trying to get him to make it on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion. It's just like with Riley on the offense when he was in Norman, like, did everything he could to make sure that person worked out on the offensive side, right? Before he gave it up to the defensive side. And we were all shocked that Billy Bowman got put on the defensive side at one point because there was a big battle. and essentially Oklahoma luckily had enough, depth on a wide receiver at that point that they didn't need him, so they gave him up on the defense, and it's worked out great for OU because of that. But I'm just, from the things I've heard, Venables is going to be very hard pressed to keep Jacoby on defense. So unless it gets to the point where Levy just goes in and says, dude, we got to have that guy like right now because we are so short and there's nobody in the portal that is worth his medal when we have a guy on campus that's better than everybody, that would be the only way. Now, I can see that happening. I just, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. All right. I think that's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider YouTube Live. If you're not a member of OU Insider VIP, this is your best chance. We got the 50% off going right now to the March 26th is when it ends. Like, we're trying to give you a week into spring practice to make sure you get on board, because after spring practice starts, April rolls around, official visits, spring game, more official visits in May and June. And on top of the official visits, the staff will start to get out and go see everybody. The evaluation period starts, I believe, in April, and it goes all the way through the month of May, where they get to go out and see all the their targets and all that type of stuff. So we were going to have you covered head to toe, front to back on OU Insider VIP. So make sure that you become a member now, just because it's cheapest and because we love to have you. And it lasts all the way through everything, the season, all the official visits, all the party in the Palace, Champion Barbecue, spring game, the National Signing Day, both of them, then all the other junior days and stuff leading up to middle of March or into March whenever you sign up. So it's worth it. It's 100% worth it if you sign up right now, OU Insider VIP. If you're not subscribed, or you can try us $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. So just give us a shot if you want to see what we're all about on the VIP and want to get all the nuggets and be in the know. That's the best way to just, wet the palate a little bit and see if you like us. If you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, do it. Hit that subscribe button right below and make sure you get it to 9,000 subscribers. We can't thank you guys enough. You Sooners fans, we're blessed to do this for you all. And we appreciate you all tuning in once again. So for Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, that's it for this version of the OU Insider YouTube Live. You guys have a blessed night.